Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with news out of Washington about the future of the Keystone XL pipeline, the line that would carry oil from Alberta's oil sands to refineries on the American Gulf Coast. The U.S. State Department has released its draft environmental assessment of the pipeline. It doesn't approve or deny the project. That decision isn't coming for months, but it does appear to say the pipeline would have little impact on climate change. Eric Sorensen is in Washington with details. Eric.
Donna, it's not a final decision. It's not conclusive. It is an exhaustive environmental analysis that has some elements for both supporters and opponents of the Keystone XL pipeline. It's still an open question whether the Keystone XL pipeline will get built. On the one hand, the State Department Environmental Impact Review suggests the U.S. can meet its energy needs over the next decade without Keystone. That's good news for environmentalists.
This doesn't make any difference to the U.S. in terms of meeting its own oil needs. So I don't think the president will have any difficulty denying this pipeline because it's not going to affect the interests of the United States.
On the other hand, blocking Keystone wouldn't stop oil sands development. The review states the proposed project is unlikely to have a substantial impact on the rate of development in the oil sands or on the amount of heavy crude oil refined in the Gulf Coast area. That would be a blow to environmentalists who argue that blocking Keystone could choke off the oil sands in Alberta. The Canadian government remains optimistic the project will go ahead.
This project will replace oil from Venezuela and the Middle East with a stable continental supply.
The pipeline approval process has already taken years. It was held up by opponents in Nebraska. TransCanada agreed to move the pipeline further east around the vulnerable sand hills. Nebraska gave its formal approval, kicking it back to Washington. The State Department is still weeks from a final recommendation. Then it will be up to President Obama to make a final decision. This pro-pipeline analyst said this week, in spite of growing oil reserves in the U.S., Keystone XL is still necessary.
This has been the most studied piece of infrastructure in our history. So if practical reality prevails, this thing would move forward just like your Prime Minister said. It's a win-win, no-brainer.
But environmentalists have seized upon Keystone as the project they would most like to stop.
It's really become a litmus test, and whichever way the president decides, there will be howls of protest and criticism from one side or the other, and probably both.
What happens now is a 45-day public comment period, plus a survey of several federal agencies. After that, it will be up to the State Department for its final recommendation, so that is weeks, if not months away. And then the final decision, goes to the president. Donna?
All right, Eric Sorensen in Washington, thanks. Canada is not just watching all this closely. Those in favor of the pipeline are redoubling their efforts to lobby for it, and environmentalists are going to work harder than ever to try to stop it. Let's go to our chief political correspondent in Ottawa, Tom Clark. Tom, what's the federal government taking away from this tonight?
Well, Donna, tonight the government is saying that it's pretty happy for obvious reasons. The government of Alberta feels much the same way. Here's the key, they say, and it's this, that this State Department report has taken the emotion out of the debate and clears the way now for scientific fact to guide the decision. And on that, says Ottawa, the scientific facts are in Canada's favor, and furthermore, the State Department tends to agree with that, discrediting the notion that this would result in massive increase in greenhouse gas emissions.
But as Eric reminded us, Tom, the ultimate decision is up to the president. He'll decide this, and it'll likely be a political decision, right?
Yeah, it's too big not to be a political decision. Already the State Department said it received more than 1 million interventions into its decision, and it's still got another 45-day period to talk about it. It's why there's almost a daily shuttle from Canada down to Washington, D.C. today, the political shuttle, if you want, because politicians here know that the future of Keystone is very perilous. There's something in the report for everyone, as Eric pointed out. You know, if you look at it another way, turn it around, the report also opened the door for the environmentalists to carry the day by saying that America simply doesn't need the oil the same way it did 8 years ago when the pipeline was first proposed, and that a rejection of the pipeline would have little effect on oil sands development. Well, that opens the door for Obama to appeal to his environmental base by rejecting it on the basis that it simply won't hurt anyone to do so, including our friends up in Canada. And it also means, and this is important, no pipeline, the Americans still get to pay that low, low price for Canadian oil instead of more expensive prices for pipeline oil.
All right, Tom Clark in Ottawa.